All right, one more video. Let's do this. 38. Pretty self-explanatory. Just the definition of complex numbers. So yeah, make sure you got that down. Systems. You're using all of your equations or inequalities to solve a problem. Linear is like y and x to the first power. Nonlinear is basically anything else. An equation says something equals something. Inequality says less than, greater than, less than, equal to, greater than, equal to. So they're just kind of doing some definitions. Just making sure you kind of know the difference between everything. Systems, basically you're looking for how many times they cross. If they don't cross at all, no solutions. If they touch once, it looks like it would touch multiple times. That's because I can't draw real well. One solution, if they do something like this and touch more than once, they just probably say several solutions. And this says infinite solutions because it only looks like one thing when in reality it's the same thing sitting on top of itself. So there's the 4 different ones there. Solving nonlinear systems. Here's the 4 steps. Isolate the variable in one of the equations. So get x equals or y equals or z equals or whatever. Replace that in the other equation. So if you can get x equals, plug this in for x in the other equation. Step 3, solve for the remaining variable. And last, substitute what you got into one of the equations in place of the variable. So if you know x is 5, go back in and say, instead of 2x, put 2 times 5 and get an actual number and solve from there. Solving systems. Look, this is a plug it in thing. Like a bunch of this is plug in, plug in, plug in. And it's supposed to equal both equations. So your x and y, when you plug it in for x and y, you'll hit enter and see if it equals whatever it's supposed to equal. Plug into the other one, hit equals, see if it equals what it's supposed to equal. Only one of the multiple choice answers is going to do that. So that's definitely a calculator work. Solving for x squared. On these, just remember that, like, if you see these, set them side by side and FOIL them out, and then literally to solve for x squared, after you maybe do some combining, everything that's not x squared gets added or subtracted to the other side. You get x squared by itself. If you already have something like this, well, then subtract the y over and divide by 5, and notice that 10 divided by 5 is 2 and not 10 over 2. But getting x squared by itself is fairly easy. Just make sure you FOIL and move everything that is not x squared to the other side. Which point will satisfy the inequality? Well, plug it in and see if it's less than what it says it's supposed to be less than, or greater than or equal to what it's supposed to be greater than or equal to. So if you've got like 2x plus 4y is greater than 10, when you plug in x and y, it better be greater than 10. Otherwise, that xy point will not satisfy the inequality. All right, here's where it gets a little weird. I got 3 pages just for this concept. That's because they want you to know like what's going on. These conics are a little weird. They got their own what's happening. Your h and k is always your center, and your distance, well, you know this from geometry, your distance from the middle out is your radius. So something like this, you see I have a radius of 2, and my center is at +2, +2. So h and k are both positives, even though it says minus right here. As far as shading, oops, not what I want. As far as shading, pick a point, either inside or outside. If the origin is outside, usually the origin is good. Because look here, if that's 0, let me switch back to a pen. If that's 0 and that's 0, 0 minus 2 is -2. -2 squared is 4. 0 minus 2 is -2. -2 squared is 4. 4 plus 4, and it just depends. If it's greater than, then that's the side we shade, because that's true. If it's less than, then we shade, because remember, we're looking here. If it's less than, well, that's not true. That said 8. That means we shade inside. So you just look and see what's true after you plug in something, some sort of familiar point. Use 0, 0, use 10, 10, use, -5, 0, whatever it is. Just use something, plug it in. Same thing with ellipses. I will say ellipses, x goes over a squared if it's long ways. Sorry, let's go with vertical. And x goes over b squared if it's horizontal. But again, you're just looking for, 0 over 9 and -416 over 25. That should be less than 1. So you just use your calculator, and you don't even have to be on the graph part for this. You can plug in an x and y and hit enter and see if it's basically the same thing we did back here. After you plug in a point, just try and see, is it true? If it's true, shade it. If it's not true, don't shade it. Same thing here, except your center is a little harder to see because usually it won't be marked. So you can find your center and plug it in, or really anything that's, because they'll either shade it, highlighter, they'll either shade all this stuff here on the inside, or obviously all the stuff on the outside. So you're trying to figure out which way are we shading. So all of those go with 45. I would write down the formulas just to make sure you kind of know, because perhaps maybe they have pluses here instead of minuses, and you got to know which way everything kind of got shifted. Test points. When you're trying to test and see which way you shade, pick one above it, pick one below it. One of them will be true, and that's the direction you shade. Like, okay, this one, when I plugged it into the equation, was less than, and it says it was supposed to be less than, we're shading down. Or if it's this one was not true because it was more than and we want to be less than, then obviously then you can go in and say, look, that's not the point that I want. This is the side I want to shade. So that's not too hard. And then again, test points with like these crazy things. Find something that's supposed to work for both and see if it'll work for both. Or find something that's not supposed to work for both and make sure that it doesn't work for both. All the equations look the same, so you're really kind of matching up how you're shading or whatever. But use a lot of calculator. On this test, please ask a lot of questions. It's fine. Ask questions. Questions are good. Just make sure you have all this stuff written down and you'll be okay.